Okay guys, in this video we are talking about Twisted Metal. This is a classic PlayStation title that I think many of you are fans of. I've seen a lot of people come out and say that I would love to see Sony make a new Twisted Metal. Well, I have some good news for you, and I think that everything we're going to be discussing here today is good news. However, I do think that there might be some people who may not see it that way. I don't think those people are going to be in the majority, but I will certainly be interested to hear their reasoning if they don't think this is good. But we know that Twisted Metal is apparently getting a reboot for the PlayStation 5. And last we heard, it was Lucid Games that was given the IP. Now, Lucid Games, if you're not familiar, they made Destruction All-Stars, which was set to be a launch title for the PlayStation 5, but ended up getting delayed by a couple of months. And it was actually going to be sold for a full $70 until Sony saw, the reaction from gamers to this title, and people were like, yeah, we're not paying $70 for this game. That's a joke, right? Like, you actually want us to pay that much? And Sony made the very smart decision to actually make it a free PS Plus title for the month of February last year. And I think that pretty much saved that game from dying instantly. But on top of that, they decided to bring the price down to about 20 bucks. So, I'm telling you this because this developer was struggling with Destruction All-Stars, and it didn't get very good reception. It didn't get very good review scores, and people were just overall kind of let down and disappointed by this title. We then found out that apparently Sony decided to give the Twisted Metal IP to this studio to reboot it, and people were feeling very torn about this. Now, here's where I believe the good news comes in. Apparently, Sony decided, and this is coming from VGC, this is what their sources are claiming, Sony decided to take the Twisted Metal IP away from Lucid Games. We don't know why, but they have now given it to one of their internal PlayStation studios, specifically a European studio. Now, I think, and I don't want to speak for everybody, but I think pretty much everybody is going to say that that is a good move. That is a positive. Because if you're somebody who cares about Twisted Metal, if you're somebody who has hope that Sony can do justice, with this title and they can bring it back to its, former glory, they have a much better chance of doing so and achieving that with one of their internal first-party studios rather than with a partner studio whose last game was considered mediocre at best. I think we can all agree that this is the right move. So with this in mind, we now have to ask ourselves, which studio is it that was apparently given the Twisted Metal IP? Well, the two studios that come to mind, there's Sony's London studio, and then there is Firesprite. Now, Firesprite is a new first-party studio. Sony acquired them, and it's kind of difficult to determine which one, got the IP. So I'm actually jumping in here after I finished making up this video because we do have a pretty significant update with this whole situation. According to VGC and their sources, Firesprite is in fact the studio that was given Twisted Metal. So this is reading from their new report. PlayStation's newly acquired Firesprite studio has taken over Lucid Games' unannounced Twisted Metal reboot and poached its game director, VGC understands. VGC reported earlier this week that Destruction All-Star studio Lucid had ceased development on a reboot of the classic car combat series. We now understand that UK-based Firesprite, which was acquired by Sony last year, is the developer which has taken over the Twisted Metal project. It's unclear why Sony decided to move the project to its new first-party studio, but it's worth noting that Lucid and Firesprite are located barely 15 minutes from each other in Liverpool, UK, and there's now evidence of staff moving over. As spotted by a Reset Era user, Matt Southern, the director of various MotorStorm games plus the original pitcher for Drive Club, has this month left his role as game director at Lucid to take on the same role at Firesprite. It's unclear if Southern is working on Lucid's Twisted Metal project or if he'll be working on the franchise at his new employer. Firesprite has multiple projects in production, including the newly announced PlayStation VR 2 game, Horizon Call of the Mountain. And so, yeah, I had to be sure to update this video and let you guys know that we figured out that, hey, Twisted Metal reboot, it's a thing. It's in development over there at Lucid Games. Now we're hearing that it's actually been taken away from Lucid Games and given to a Sony first-party developer. Now we have confirmation from VGC that, yes, Firesprite is the studio that was given Twisted Metal. But on top of that, apparently they actually have a director for this game now who, was the director over there at Lucid Games. And so it's a pretty interesting situation. I didn't really expect it to kind of go down like this, but I think it's all for the better. And, you'll hear me talk about that later in this video. It's going to be interesting, because one thing about Lucid Games that I think some people will say is, well, they have experience with making a game like this, because a lot of people who played Destruction All-Stars or who talked about it or had any interest in it whatsoever, they all kind of said the same thing, and they were like, well, why didn't you guys just make a Twisted Metal game? It seemed like that would make more sense than whatever this is. A lot of people did not like the aesthetic of Destruction All-Stars. Twisted Metal is pretty much the polar opposite, aesthetically speaking, to what Destruction All-Stars is. So, you kind of have to just wonder how this is going to play out. Now, my opinion on this, as I said, I think this is the right move. I think Sony is doing the right thing here. I think it's just so much smarter of them to entrust an IP like Twisted Metal, which has a chance, to really, I think, make a comeback this generation, depending on what they do with it. Entrusting that with one of their first-party studios. I mean, every time I talked about Lucid Games developing Twisted Metal, there's very much just this sense of apprehension where it's like, yeah, I don't know, man. It could go either way, but I think most people were kind of leaning in the direction of it's probably not going to be very good. I think a lot of people, and I will say this, I've seen multiple people in my own comment sections when we would talk about this in the past straight up say, like, I was excited about this Twisted Metal reboot until I heard it was Lucid Games making it. I've seen multiple people say that, so I have to imagine some people are feeling pretty good about this news. And so, yeah, that's pretty much all the information I have for you guys. There is a Twisted Metal reboot that is in the works. It was once being developed by Lucid Games, but Sony took the IP from them for whatever reason. Maybe they just weren't happy with what they were doing with it, and they decided to give it to one of their European PlayStation studios. So at this point, I want you to leave your thoughts down in the comments below. Let me know which studio you think is now working on Twisted Metal and how you feel about Sony making this decision. I will certainly be interested to see what you have to say. Leave the video a like if you enjoyed it or found it informative. Subscribe if you're new, hit the bell notification icon, and feel free to share this video out on top of all that. But until next time, guys, take care.